Hey, good morning, everybody. Robert Phoenix here. Just dealing with some technical difficulties. Took me about an extra 10 minutes to get online today and bring you the latest and the greatest of what's happening. So, here in Fredericksburg, Texas, where I'm broadcasting to you from, it has become extremely wet and cold. Excuse me while I change my bifocals. A little less glare in there, right? Although these don't really fit me all that greatly, all that well. Hey, yeah. So we have major flooding taking place. We've had emergency flash flood warnings, and the temperature is right around 40 degrees now. So we're headed into quite potentially freezing weather and snow. This is the most powerful power coffee I've had. I've been adding powdered paleo, what do you call it? Collagen, beef collagen to my coffee. Good morning, Miss Judy. How are you today? Um, I'm just gonna start today's. Hey, Joe. Good morning. I'm gonna start today's show by. Hey, Maury. Still decent weather. Yeah, Maury, you're down. As long as you don't have to deal with hurricanes, you're good down there. You know, Florida's always gonna have pretty decent weather. So today, I'm just gonna get off on a little bit of an intuitive kind of piece, and what I really try to stay as close to as possible is connecting dots because I found it's a pretty good system to sort of pull back the curtain and see what's going on. And it feels to me like there's something in the air. I'm feeling something intuitive it's unsettling. And I'm not I don't I don't want to be a minister of doom and gloom and darkness. Lord knows I've been accused of that in the past. And it's also quite, I think, important to, keep one's eyes on the horizon and not turn away from, what we see in the world, because I think it's an important thing to stay awake and stay focused. But there's something in the air that feels like, how do I say this? There's a very dark undercurrent that's taking place right now in churning. Now, I think when this is all said and done, and who knows how long the all said and done piece is going to uh, be, or how long it will last, or when it will finally will crack the dawn of a new day, as they say. I can't necessarily, give you a time of the day, although astrologically we are looking at Pluto in Aquarius, which is not that far from now. I mean, it's really going to be like in Pluto and Aquarius in significantly by 2024. So we're looking at 5 years, and of course there are some very important pieces that are ahead of us along the way. We have Saturn going into Aquarius after the major conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So we're going to see society change. We're going to see culture change. It's already taking place, and it's like it's out of the gate. It is out of the gate, and it's got momentum. But one of the things I'm going to talk about today is what you can do on a local front, which may actually be quite helpful to some of you out there who are living in smaller towns, towns anywhere between, say, 5 to 50,000 people, where I think you can still begin to make a bit of a difference in terms of the quality of one's life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, and but I just wanted to get into this dark piece a little bit. I think the moon is in Capricorn today, if I'm not mistaken, and it would sort of cast a kind of an emotional shadow, since we're dealing with also Saturn in Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn. But it doesn't feel warm and fuzzy. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of spark or oxygen in the atmosphere right now. Part of it has to do with the weather, of course. We are at times captives of the meteorological conditions of our lives, although if you're truly free, none of that really matters, does it? This is what I've always tried to practice in life. When people say, "Oh my God, it's hot. It's so hot. Oh, I can't take it more." It's like, you know what? I'm not going to be defined by the temperature. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's hot. Deal with it, right? Oh, it's so damn cold. It's so damn cold. No, it is cold. You know what you do? You get warm. That's what happens. So I do my best not to be defined by meteorological conditions, although we can't necessarily help it. And it's been pretty dramatic here over the past 24 hours. Lots and lots and lots of rain and flooding and more to come. So, hence the title, Here Comes the Flood, of today's show, but also the flood of perhaps phenomena, events, activities, and emotions that lie ahead of us as we lurch towards the November midterms, which are not that far away. I found some interesting stuff online regarding the midterms. Let me see if I can find this one piece here. It's one more little news nugget I want to bring into today's conversation, which I think is really pertinent and gives you some ideas as to kind of what we're going to be in store for in the very, very close run up of the election, the midterms, the elections themselves, and then what happens on the backside of it. So let me the story that I'm looking at here. Let me just, I gotta, it's not that far away. One minute. Okay, we're almost there. Says the Republicans are adopting the Proud Boys. I've talked about the Proud Boys. That's basically Ezra Levant's gang from Rebel Media, and how they show up and insert themselves into these very hot and heavy rallies in Portland and in other places where they can kick some ass. That's what they do. I'm still trying to find this one piece about the midterms, because they're gearing up. They're gearing up for the crisis and the chaos that I think is going to take place during the night of the midterms and on the backside of the midterms. So just bear with me. It's the one thing that I need to find here. Okay, so here's another story about the Proud Boys and Antifa clashing in New York. How about that? Okay, why don't we go here? Let me just drop into some of the new stuff. Okay, let me try this here. Okay, so one of the stories I found today, which I think is quite interesting, has to do with Donald Trump and his split personality, which I've talked about pretty consistently for a long time. And this story that I'm about to read really typifies, I believe, how Trump sees himself and how he actually manifests in the world. I mean, Trump is essentially a high-functioning schizophrenic, is what he is. He might even have Asperger's or something like that. Certainly his son does. Let me read this. This is from Breitbart. I don't often go to Breitbart, but I saw this headline and I thought it was worth reading. It says, on the eve of the 100 days in office milestone, President Donald Trump claims he is both a nationalist and a globalist. Hold on a second. I'm having an issue here with my glasses. A little funky lenses. There we go. All right, here we go. Let me read this to you. This is what he told the Wall Street Journal. Hey, I'm a nationalist and a globalist. And you know what? That is actually not too far afield. I mean, if you look at what he's been doing, he's been making sort of assaults on the global economy with his tariffs and, to some extent, his sanctions against certain countries. He's involved on an industrial global level. He's also pulled out of certain key agreements like climate change and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And those are kind of nationalist-oriented agendas. So when we look at what he's doing, he absolutely is both. He is both a nationalist and a globalist. Let me read this. And I'm the only one who makes the decision. Believe me, Trump said. Always, always, always beware of people who say, believe me. But Trump also said that he would terminate NAFTA if we were unable to make a deal. But hopefully we won't have to do that. By the way, this is from April. This is from April of last year. So I'm reading something that's not new. I'm just giving you kind of a look into how Trump sees himself. So this is not anything that is breaking news. But I wanted to bring this up because I think it's fascinating. But Trump also said, okay, he didn't terminate NAFTA, but what he did is he basically hacked out new deals with both Mexico and Canada with NAFTA. Now, I don't have the details of those deals, but I'm assuming that Trump would have been on the right side of that negotiation because it was already pretty bad. Trump's remarks come as debate swirls around his presidential campaign promise to end the North American Free Trade Agreement, in contrast to his recent assertion that he will negotiate a revision of the treaty that has guided the U.S. trade policy with Mexico and Canada since 1994. So looking back in time, that's exactly what he did. It's exactly what he did. Okay, he did renegotiate. He did renegotiate those treaties. So he did what he said he was going to do. But the reason I brought this up is because it is indicative of Trump and how he sees himself. He sees himself as basically a multi, I wouldn't call it multi-dimensional, but he has a multi-persona. He's able to bifurcate and have absolutely no conscience around any of it, which really is kind of a Gemini trait. And I am not demeaning any Geminis out there. People think that I have it out for Geminis. I really, really don't. I think Geminis are very interesting people. But let's just say Geminis don't have the same kind of attachment to how they're perceived as other people or other signs do. And it's true. Gemini is always willing to cross a line to essentially occupy another part of who they are without a lot of judgment in a lot of ways, because the other side is supposed to learn about what they're doing. And this is the magic of Gemini. It's like flipping across these two ratios, right? These two zones inside of who they are, which is interesting. It makes life interesting for the rest of us. And Trump is a Gemini on steroids. So this is what he does. So I just wanted to bring this article to your attention. Again, it goes all the way back to 2017, but he basically says, I'm a nationalist and I'm a globalist. And he is not veered from that declaration. Not once whatsoever. Interesting stuff. You know, speaking of Trump, his latest thing with Elizabeth Warren has gotten to absolutely absurd proportions. Now, you guys know the story. Trump basically said he would give her being Elizabeth Warren, $1 million, $1 million, if he could administer a DNA test for her. Like, go right there to Elizabeth Warren's office, take that little Q-tip and swab the inside of her cheek and put it in the envelope and then send it off to Ancestry.com or 23andMe or whatever shady company is now offering DNA testing. Well, he didn't do it, but she did, because she wanted to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that she had Cherokee blood inside of her. And lo and behold, the headlines come out. She's from Norman, Oklahoma, which is why she believes she has Cherokee blood. Lo and behold, it all comes out that, she does. She does have some Cherokee blood. 1/500th, one out of like 512. Like, I mean, the amount of Cherokee blood that she has inside of her is absolutely minuscule And in fact, it probably gets very close to the same level as most Americans. Now, the reason why, of course, this is an issue and a controversy is because she actually used Native American heritage to get a deal on her, her admissions and actually pay less tuition because of it. This is what's happened. And it's gone on and on and on and on. So there's been a little bit of a backlash from Cherokee Nation, which is based in Oklahoma. And this is what they have to say. The Cherokee Nation official says Elizabeth Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage. Cherokee Nation Secretary of State Chuck Hoskin Jr. said Monday that DNA tests are useless to determine tribal citizenship and don't distinguish whether a person's ancestors were indigenous to North or South America. He said using a DNA test to lay claim to any connection to the Cherokee Nation or tribal nation, even vaguely, is inappropriate and wrong. There he is. There he is, the Buddha of 15 minutes of flame, Mr. Jasper. Say hi to everybody, Jasper. Right on cue. You're a little late today, buddy. A little late today. When you got here. Warren on Monday released DNA test results providing some evidence of Native American in her lineage. The Massachusetts Democrat who said she was told her mother was part Cherokee and part Delaware acknowledged that DNA and family history have nothing to do with tribal affiliation or citizenship, which is determined by tribal nations. She said she respects that distinction and doesn't list herself as Native American in the Senate. But this all goes back to when she did list herself as Native American when she applied for college. So Senator Elizabeth Warren is suggesting Donald Trump's comments about him personally administering a DNA test to her to prove her Native American heritage are creepy. She tweeted Monday, he makes creepy physical threats because he attacks women who scare him. The Massachusetts Democrat and Trump critic on Monday released DNA test results providing some evidence of Native American in her lineage. Warren is a potential 2020 presidential candidate whom Trump calls Pocahontas because of her ancestry claim. Trump had offered to donate $1 million to charity if a DNA test proves the claim. Trump said Monday he'll only do it if I can test her personally. Warren tweeted Trump as a cowardly elitist and she won't sit quietly for Trump's racism. So she took the test. So now it's a he said, she said. There won't be any money changing hands. I'd be very surprised if Trump has $1 million in liquidity that he could just toss over to some given charity, any given charity. This is so funny. I mean, it is so funny. Strong evidence. This is what we're seeing on Yahoo. Strong evidence. She goes to Norman, Oklahoma to walk the red road where she can reinvest in her indigenous roots. Her test was performed by Carlos Bustamante. He, by the way, he's a professor at Stanford, and he prepared the report. So it is scientific. It is factual. Bottom line is, she hardly has any Native American, any Cherokee in her. And the Cherokee Nation has said enough is enough. Drop it. You know, you shouldn't be politicizing this. Move on. I hope we can move on. It's just yet another speed bump in the road. And great, yes, it does provide us with some interesting entertainment because reality has become more interesting than actual TV itself. Am I wrong here? I mean, this is what happens when you have reality TV star as your president. Everything about reality becomes a reality show. It becomes bizarre. It's like a combination of The Apprentice, A Surreal Life, Big Brother, Survivor. It's all of these shows sort of mashed up into one fascinating, bizarre, and surreal circus. I mean, just look at the Kanye thing. The Kanye thing is just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. Could you imagine a rapper going to the White House under the Bush administration? That was not happening. Like, who would have gone to the White House during the Bush administration? Garth Brooks, maybe, because we were fed all that phony American bullshit when Bush was president. Do you remember how popular NASCAR was when Bush was president? It was crazy. It was like NASCAR became the national sport of the United States. NASCAR, born again Christianity, all Pluto and Sagittarius stuff. It was all faux Americana, And once Bush was out of the Oval Office, isn't it interesting too that NASCAR takes place on an oval? It's just another little surreal sort of factoid. But once that happened and Barack Obama became president, NASCAR started to wane in popularity. Isn't that interesting? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The popularity with NASCAR was always the same. However, the programming with NASCAR and the marketing for NASCAR became a little less front and center. There wasn't as much of an emphasis placed on NASCAR from a network perspective. You go back during the Bush administration, all the networks were pushing NASCAR really hard because it was one of these sports that screamed Americana. It's Southern, it's based out of the South. It's got quote unquote conservative roots, but it was just another ploy, just another meme. We had people hooked into a particular kind of ideological subset. And then once Obama was elected, that went away. That was gone. NASCAR now is sort of a back burner kind of event and a back burner kind of media creation. It's nothing like what it was when Bush was president. But now we don't need any of that because we have the greatest reality show on earth. We have the Trump administration. Yeah, I'm sure there's like some hip hop people came to the White House, but that wasn't really like, I don't think Kanye ever went to go visit Barack Obama. Did he? He might have. He and Kim Kardashian might have done it. I was thinking that if you look at Kanye, and I found this picture of Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, who looks terrible, by the way. He's 62 years old. He's 4 years old, and I've always been a big Johnny Lydon fan. I think the Sex Pistols are one of the best bands of all time, and clearly a creation to some extent of Tavistock. I'll get into that maybe at some point with Emily. But there was a picture of his band, Public Image, was touring in New Orleans, and he was shown. There was a picture of him in New Orleans from his hotel room, and how the hotels overlook Bourbon Street, and it was one of those situations. And he's wearing a "Make America Great Again" T-shirt, not a cap, but a T-shirt, because of course he's got the punk rock do that he's still sporting. So Johnny Lydon he's a supporter of Donald Trump. Kanye West is a supporter of Donald Trump. Now, what does that say? Well, first of all, Kanye West is a Gemini, and we all know that there's a big Gemini effect going on with Kanye and Trump. And there's a Kanye before the stage incident, and there's a Kanye after the stage incident in Sacramento. Lydon is an Aquarius, and he's the perfect Pied Piper for the punk rock generation. That's exactly who he was. But what it says to me is that Trump is kind of a punk rock president. He is a punk rock, whether you believe it or not, Trump is punk. Why is he punk? Well, he's got a Sun-Uranus conjunction, which is radical. It's revolutionary. And in some ways, and again, I'm not here to like prop Trump up. I'm just looking at, I'm looking at sort of the pieces, trying to weave these things together. In some ways, Trump is way more revolutionary than somebody like Ocasio or even Barack Obama. I mean, because they are cliche revolutionary. Che cliche, right? That's what they are. Because they roll out the sort of the canards and the talking points and the bullet points of what a revolution is supposed to look like. what a revolution is supposed to be, who the figureheads are, what the symbols are. Colin Kaepernick, becoming this sort of modern day version of Che Guevara. And by the way, Colin Kaepernick has, guess what he's done? He's filed for a copyright or a copyright, Pat, what do you call it? I think it might be copyright, trademark. He's filed for a trademark of his hair and his face. Well, of course, any good socialist is going to file a trademark because they don't want to violate those rights, those workers' rights. Colin Kaepernick has shown himself to be exactly who he is, which is a social opportunist. Colin Kaepernick has eschewed playing football because there are teams in Canada that would love to have Colin Kaepernick play for them. Love it. He will. Colin Kaepernick will never play another day of football in his life. Never, unless it's with his kids. And who knows about that? No, he's become an icon, a brand. He'll never have to work again as long as he stays relevant and does what his puppet masters instruct him to do and do it well. Colin Kaepernick is a made man. Don't cry for him around his loss of his football career. He lost interest in it anyway. But Trump is way more punk rock, way more revolutionary, way more radical than anybody on the left. And maybe that's why there's some bile and hatred towards him. I think it was probably back in 2013, I actually wrote a piece about how the alternative conservative community, this is 2013, is really like the edge. Like at that time, I'm thinking, well, this is the revolutionary point of the spear. This is where it's at, because it was so, at that time, it was so far out. It was so far from the center of the Obama universe that it had to be the most dangerous and politically and ideologically explosive idea that was available. And sure enough, not to toot my own horn, but I happen to be right about that. And when I see somebody like Johnny Rotten, who in a weird way is kind of like Trump, I think he might have even been on one of The Apprentices. Am I right about that? I haven't looked into it, but I think he might have been on one of The Apprentices. But Lydon he went from being totally like the real punk rocker out of the whole bunch had to be Sid Vicious, because Sid didn't last very long. He wasn't a very good bass player. He could barely play, and he lived fast and he died young. And there you go, Sid Vicious. Now Johnny Rotten, he's going to fade away. Neil Young said it's better to the burnout than it is to rust, which is a great song. This is the story of Johnny Rotten. Johnny Rotten's going to fade away, but he's going to fade away in his own unique and, how shall I say this, individualistic, eccentric sort of way. He married into money. Johnny married into money. He became kind of a made man on his own. But he's had this weird career. I saw him on an episode where Jay Leno was teaching him how to drive. Apparently, Jay Leno works with celebrity drivers. Johnny Lydon doesn't even know how to drive. He's had limos, car services. So he was teaching him how to drive at 60. But he's had a funny career. I remember one time seeing him on Judge Judy. So he's got this kind of carny reality show side of him. And the Sex Pistols were a great reality show. That's exactly what they were. They were a total reality show. So his coming out in support of Trump and Kanye West, who knows what's going on there? I mean, Kanye could have been reprogrammed. I mean, I have no doubt that he could have been reprogrammed. But it's interesting how the left has turned on Kanye, how the hip hop community has turned on Kanye. They can't stand it now because he's going against the grain of whatever values they think that they've embraced. Fascinating to watch. Absolutely fascinating. So Trump is your punk rock president, and the punk rock president is leading the reality TV show reality that we're living in. Every day there's just high strange. It's better than TV. Are you kidding me? He's got beefs with Elizabeth Warren going on. I mean, the whole thing is just amazing. It's totally amazing. And listen, if the world is going to hell in a handbasket, at least make it entertaining. Am I right? At least let's be entertained by this thing. Okay, so I wanted to switch gears a little bit because I wanted to bring attention to what we're doing here in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is we are starting an effort to remove the fluoride from our water. And this is, I have to say, this is the first actual political project, operation, action to get into some community organizing language, action that I've been involved with. And I've held off on being involved in things like this because I always felt like maybe the deck would be stacked against me on some level, and maybe that I wasn't really ready to kind of throw in on a boots on the ground sort of effort. But here we are. And tonight we're having our first volunteer meeting, and we're going to be working on getting signatures to amend the city charter to remove industrialized fluoride from the water. So I'll be giving you updates around this. We have a Facebook page called Clean Water Fred, Fred being short for Fredericksburg. And we're going to have a GoFundMe because we're going to need some money for some marketing materials, and we might have to hire a lawyer for some legal advice and whatever other sundry items we're going to need to get this thing onto the ballot for May, so that we can basically run this thing and get fluoride removed from our water. And I'm sure we're going to encounter some resistance. That's the nature of the beast. But I will keep you posted about the GoFundMe. I think we're going to look at kind of a target of around 10K, and that could be enough for us to get all of our materials together and take out an ad or two, whatever we need to do to push this thing across the finish line. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a template so that if you live in another part of the country, you'll be able to use some materials that we're creating as a kit and basically apply the same strategies and the same talking points to the place that you live. So this is really an experiment in local and personal empowerment. So I can actually, I talk about things, and you're only as good as the things that you talk about if you can actually participate in them. So this is my active participation. This is my engagement of will. And hopefully we'll be successful, and it'll inspire others, and you can begin to do things on a local level as well. So if we can do this, then I think probably, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think what we want to do after this is we want to get into probably the 5G issue. So I wanted to stay in line with this idea of removing the fluoride. I wanted to read an article from Soren Dreyer, and he picked it up. He picked up the article from, let me just go to the original source here, because that way I don't have to hit the read more button, which I just did now. And you can stay in some level of continuity. The website is called preventdisease.com. And this is from October 16th. So this is a very recent article. The author is Marco Torres. And it says higher levels of fluoride found to be linked with ADHD in children. There is overwhelming evidence that the prolonged ingestion of fluoride causes significant damage to health, and particularly to the nervous system. According to University of Toronto and York University researchers, higher levels of fluoride during pregnancy have now been linked with more ADHD-like symptoms in school-age children. How about that? Fluoride can be toxic by ingesting 1 part per million, and the effects are not immediate, as they can take 20 years to become more evident. So if we look at things like Alzheimer's and dementia, I firmly believe that fluoride is playing a role there. And perhaps even with disorders like ALS and MLS and Parkinson's, fluoride might actually be the culprit behind a lot of our neurological disorders. So this is what they say. Our findings are consistent with a growing body of evidence suggesting that the growing fetal nervous system may be negatively affected by higher levels of fluoride exposure, said Morteza Bashaj, the study's lead author and researcher at the Dalai Lama School of Public Health. The study, Prenatal Fluoride Exposure and Attention Deficit Disorder Hyperactivity, Symptoms in Children at 6 to 12 years of age in Mexico City, published in Environment International, analyzed the data from 213 mother-child pairs in Mexico City that were part of the early life exposures in Mexico to environmental toxics project. Okay, so the acronym for that is ELEMENT. Don't you love it? ELEMENT. Early life exposures in Mexico to environmental toxicants. ELEMENT. So it's the ELEMENT project, which recruited pregnant women from 1994 to 2005. So this is a study that spans over 10 years and has continued to follow the women and their children ever since. This is a long-range study. I got to applaud these people in Mexico. Tap water and dental products have been fluoridated in communities in Canada and the United States, as well as milk and table salt in some other countries, by varying amounts for more than 60 years to prevent cavities. These assumptions were later dismissed by hundreds of scientific publications, which showed that internal consumption of fluoridated water had no effect on tooth decay. In recent years, fierce debate over the safety of water fluoridation, particularly for children's developing brains, has fueled researchers to explore the issue and provide evidence to inform national drinking water standards. The CDC and prevention says dental fluorosis is highest among adolescents between the ages of 12 and 15. One reason for the increase in fluorosis, Americans are now exposed to fluoride from a variety of sources, including toothpaste, mouth rinses, and prescription supplements. The Department of Health and Human Services says fluoride was found to be equivocal carcinogen by the NCI, that's the National Cancer Institute, and their toxicological program. In point of fact, fluoride causes more human cancer death and causes it faster than any other chemical, stated Dr. Dean Burke, PhD, who spent over 3 decades with the National Cancer Institute. The study published in Neurologia showed the prolonged ingestion of fluoride can cause significant damage to health, particularly to the nervous system. That was the conclusion by a review of studies by researchers Valdez and Jimenez et al. Fluoridation is no longer effective, contains Hardy Lineback, head of the preventive dentistry program at the University of Toronto, who says adding the chemical to water is more harmful than beneficial. Researchers suspect a connection to cancer because half of ingested fluoride is deposited in bones. Okay, let's just step back for a moment here. Most people, hopefully, are aware of the fact that fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum processing, and fluoride was essentially added to the nation's water supply when Alcoa hired Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was responsible for fluoride. Edward Bernays might have been one of the most evil people in the 20th century. Because what they did, Aluminum Reynolds, Alcoa, the aluminum companies, had all this fluoride byproduct from basically creating aluminum. In order to get aluminum, to smelt aluminum, you have this byproduct, and it's fluoride. It's sodium fluoride. What are they going to do with it? Well, let's add it to the water because somehow it's going to be better for you and your teeth. So Bernays got together some sketchy dentists and did what they normally do, which is pass the legislation, under the radar, right around Christmas time, and boom, all of a sudden fluoride is a substance that is recognized by the AMA, the ADA, as being a preventative to tooth decay. And that's when it all started. So we've been dealing with fluoride in our water supply for a number of decades now. And it's interesting that cancer has really exploded in the 20th century. And they're having some very clear evidence emerge that fluoride is connected to cancer. And not only is it connected to cancer, but it's also connected to neurological disorders. What would happen if we removed fluoride from our water supply? Is there a chance? Is there an outside chance that we might see a decrease in cancer? That we might see a decrease in neurological disorders in humans? It's worth a shot, don't you think? Well, I think so. Now, perhaps the medical industry may not think so because they're there to treat all these disorders at an extremely high rate. So perhaps on the front line, fluoride is very profitable on a long-term basis to the medical industry. Here's a fact: most developed nations do not fluoridate their water. In Western Europe, for example, only 3% of the population consumes fluoridated water. Only 11 countries in the world have more than 50% of their population drinking fluoridated water. Australia, 80%, Brunei, 95%, Chile, 70%, Guyana, 62%, Hong Kong, 100%, the Irish Republic, 73%, Israel, 70%, Malaysia, 75%, New Zealand, 62%, Singapore, 100%, and the US has 64%. In total, 377,655,000 people worldwide drink artificially fluoridated water. This represents 5% of the world's population. It's not a big part of the population, but clearly in this country, 62%, it's over half. The research team for the EL study includes experts from the University of Toronto, York University, National Institute of Public Health of Mexico, University of Michigan, Indiana University, University of Washington, and Harvard School of Public Health. They analyzed urine samples that had been obtained from mothers during pregnancy and from their children between 6 and 12 years of age to reconstruct personal measures of fluoride exposure for both mother and child. Could you imagine having to give pee samples for 10 years? Must pay pretty well. Our findings show that children with elevated prenatal exposure to fluoride are more likely to show symptoms of ADHD as reported by parents. Prenatal fluoride exposure was more strongly associated with inattentive behaviors and cognitive problems, but not with hyperactivity, said Bashash. The work builds off of previous research of the team published on this population, demonstrating that high levels of urine fluoride during pregnancy are associated with lower scores on tests of IQ and cognition in the school-age children. There you go. ADHD is the most common psychiatric disorder diagnosed in childhood, affecting between 5 and 9% of all school-age children. Well, that's right around the same 5%. Right? 5%, that's the amount of people that are drinking fluoride worldwide. If we can begin to understand the reasons behind this association, we can then begin to develop preventative strategies to mitigate the risk. This is Christine Till, who's the Associate Professor of Psychology at York University and one of the co-authors of the study. So that's what she has to say. Interesting. All right, let me check in with you peeps in the chat room, see what's going on over there in Chatland. Sun Uranus, he's an agent of change. Absolutely. Keep a sharp eye out for any provocateurs at your meeting. Well, it's just going to be a volunteer meeting, and I got a sharp eye. Bernays, that motherfucker, totally. Taboo to calcifies the pineal gland, and everyone third eye blind. Yes, Ani, you're totally correct. You're totally correct. There's an article here that's linked to what I was reading, which is about detoxing metals from your body and potentially even from your pineal gland. So let me just read this, since we are solutions-based here. We don't just bitch about the world. Now we bring you actual steps you can take. So here are 4 steps to detox from fluoride and heavy metal. Some of you are probably already hip to this. You got a smart chat room. So you want to start off your day with drinking 1 lemon squeezed in 12 ounces of filtered water. So the lemon will activate your liver to release toxins. Real simple. Get your lemons, squeeze them out, put them in the water early in the morning. That's step number 1. and it also helps you with your gut. It's a great way to start your day. Optimize your detox meals. So using healthy fats like olive oil, flax oil, and then amino acids are very, very important because they actually help in the detoxification of your liver where you store a bunch of stuff. And you want to actually stay on top of uh, good metals like zinc and selenium because they'll help you detoxify the other stuff. Of course, we know that plants with a high chlorophyll factor, things like well, your leafy greens, the broccoli, and all that good stuff, kale from the sea. We're dealing with the plankton-based greens, chlorella, spirulina, enhanced detoxification pathways. This is interesting. I'm going to read this one to you verbatim. This is where the really clever stuff happens. Your blood enters the liver full of toxins and bacteria and leaves clean. That is if it is working properly. If the unwanted pollutants are neutralized in the liver to make them less harmful to the body using a series of complicated chemical processes. Some of the chemicals are recycled and the rest are dumped into your excrement in a substance called bile. Your liver is also responsible for many other functions, including digesting fats, storing vitamins, and energy supplies, plus more. Many of the recommendations below promote the function of the liver by supplying it with nutrients that it uses to ensure that the chemical processes we describe are working and that the production of bile is maximized, speed up our cleansing processes. So one of the things that they recommend here is a detox broth. B12 is really good. B6 is really good. We talked about broccoli, collard greens, kale, daikon, radishes, garlic, onions, omega-3 eggs. The detox broth has, you get a large pot of filtered water. You throw in collard greens, Swiss chard, kale, mustard greens, cabbage, dandelion, Brussels sprouts, daikon radish, watercress, seaweed, shiitake mushrooms, cilantro, garlic, leeks, fennel, anise, ginger, turmeric, and you boil it until they're all soft. And then you can take a large batch and refrigerate it for up to 3 days. That's pretty simple. So I'll read the ingredients again. Collard, Swiss chard, kale, mustard greens, cabbage, dandelion, Brussels sprouts, daikon, radish, watercress, seaweed, shiitake mushrooms, cilantro, garlic leeks, fennel, anise, fresh ginger, turmeric. It actually sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And we're getting to a time where it's really cold out there. So cooking up a really fresh, really nice batch of detox broth can be not only good for you, but in a cold environment, just what the doctor ordered. Now, there's a juice version of this as well. A lot of people out there are juicers. And I'm and I'm not talking old school juicers, okay? We're talking new age juicers. So aloe vera juice, apples, asparagus, beets, including the greens of the beets, cabbage, carrot greens, celery, cucumbers, and parsley. Okay, you do that, you get it all together, juice those puppies, right? Boom, here's your detox juice. And then they also have the supplements to detox. Selenium, zinc, lipoic acid, milk thistle, garlic. We all know those are good. Iodine, lecithin, those are great. They can help increase the urine irrigation of sodium fluoride out of the body. And then they get into chelation here. So chelation, you got to be really careful with the chelation because you want to make sure that you're not chelating out all your minerals. So there are some that are good, like selenium and zinc. Good source of selenium, by the way, are Brazil nuts and walnuts. So here's some of the things that they recommend. BioRay, NDF liquid, that's a powerful alternative to DMSA. DMSA, which is meso 2,3-demercaptasuccinic acid, that's a chelator, and it's used to detoxify your body very quickly of heavy metals. So DMSA is non-synthetic in origin. BioRay I think, is more synthetic. Then we have sun chlorella, which I mentioned. Teaspoons of flaxseed oil, walnut oil, deep sea fish oil. Those are actually very, very helpful. Ginger is a kidney cleanser. Dandelion and milk thistle. Green tea. They're recommending decaffeinated green tea. I used to drink a lot of green tea. Sauna therapies are also good in terms of detoxing. So here's a whole list of ways in which you can begin to detoxify and hopefully reclaim your third eye and your pineal gland. Thanks, Ani, for bringing that up in the chat room. Let's see. Joe says, suppose if you have a lot of mercury amalgam fillings, you have to be careful with cilantro. It can pull mercury from the mouth and organs. So with cilantro, you have to eat it with another food. You can't just chew it, right? I mean, you've got to be able to incorporate cilantro into your diet with another food source. Yeah, I'm going to put the links to everything here in the show, link for the show when we're done. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? And can you provide a link, please? My boss gives her 2-year-old fluoride toothpaste. That's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Brutal. You don't want to do that. Got a switched on chat room. This is I have to say that the people that show up, whether it's here or on Facebook or on the Sunday night chats, you guys are fantastic. You're all so sharp, smart, and you've got your eyes on the prize. And there's not a lot of. The other thing I like about you guys is that you're not hateful, and I know that's really kind of a funny word to use, but it's okay to be precise and focused and laser-like and call things out without having to resort to being nasty and crude and all the other things that it seems like we traffic in. Oh, Jasper had a little sneeze. You okay? You all right? Okay. Okay, you're gonna be fine. It's been here the whole time. You'll be good. Yeah. That seems to just be the stock and trade in the world these days. And you guys are not that. And God bless you. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'll keep you apprised of what happens with our meeting. I'll give updates every now and then with what's going on with our effort here to take the fluoride out of the water in Fredericksburg. And if we're successful, we'll be happy to pass on the tools. And if you live in a small community and you can get a footprint in your small community, a kind of an active footprint in there, then this could be a really good stepping stone for that. In fact, we're working. Joe, you activated the FB account. Yeah, I don't blame you. My Facebook account was hacked, and so I've got a bunch of people posing as me. Whatever, bullshit, absolute bullshit. Anyway, all right, I'm out of here for today. I'll be back tomorrow, and maybe I'll give you an update on the meeting and how it went. But you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to 50 Minutes of Flame. And I will put those links inside of the chat box. There we go. We got, Steve and Chris say cilantro pesto. All right. Garlic, basil, Brazil nuts, sunflower seeds, cilantro, 2/3 sea flax oil, lemon juice, dulce. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Stay warm out there, stay dry, and I'll be back tomorrow. Ciao.